so don't worry. This was the last webinar of the cycle, and it's about teaching younger learners. So let's start first of all with the definition. So the definition of like young learners, I try to make it as simple as I could. So I would start defining early years, so between 2 and 5 years old. And then there is what it's called primary. So primary years, it's around elementary school age, so between 6 and 10. And then we have the lower secondary school, which is between the 11 and 14 years old, like the middle school age. And then we have, sorry, also the tone of my voice today, it's very, very low. The volume is gonna be tricky, but I hope that you can hear me. I have my tea, I have my water, I'm staying hydrated. Anyways, so I have then upper secondary, so between 15 and 17, around high school age. And then we have young adult or young learners, depending on the context. And then it's between 18 and 25 years old, so the end of high school in some countries, and then university year, like undergrad. Okay, now that we have defined what's younger learners' age, more or less, let's focus about the differences between the young learner and the older learner. So I believe that the main difference between these two types of learners is the acquisition process. So the way they acquire language. So yes, of course, the age, one might think that age is the main difference, but in my opinion, it doesn't necessarily mean that age can make a huge impact on the difference, but I think the way they learn, their cognitive system, it's very, very different. Another difference between like, for example, younger learners between like primary and also high school students, it's the adult, like it's the brain plasticity. So between birth and adolescence, the plasticity of the brain allows younger learners to acquire knowledge faster and permanently. So, what I mentioned before about older learners, these might mean the older learners acquire language maybe slower or short term. So, why early second language learning is relevant? Because young learners acquire language to use it. So, it's very practical, it's very immediate, it's not much theory. It's not very theoretical, in my opinion. The more you make younger learners understand they are learning a language to use it, the more language process learning is going to be faster and more engaging. Also, another factor that allows language learning for younger learners like to be beneficial, it's because teachers are trained in the needs of younger learners. For example, if I know that my students are going to need English to communicate at home or to communicate among their peers, it's gonna make it more engaging. And also, this works only if the learners are giving opportunities for authentic communicative experiences in their target language. So, what I said before about language learning not focused and not being focused on theory, it's because the more authentic it is, the more effective it can be. So, expose younger learners to group activities, communicative activities, making them exposed to authentic material, like listening, videos, or making them produce language to use in an authentic situation outside the classroom. So, what's the role of intercultural communicative competence in early education? It's not really the focus of my webinar, but I think it was worth mentioning. As teachers, I have the responsibility to balance out the intercultural communication in the classroom, because young learners might come from different cultural background, religious background, or they have different native languages. So I think it's really important for teachers to be aware of the intercultural communication and be competent. What does it mean to be intercultural competent? If you came to my first webinar, I talked about these intercultural competence as being aware of the different backgrounds that students can have and try to be the intercultural communicator in the classroom. So learning languages at an early age massively helps learner to acquire language and cultural learning to be more efficient, to be more engaging. And also this also enhance students' opportunities to gain communicative competence and appropriate linguistic skills. So they will find themselves more confident. They will find themselves more engaged into the language process. So, as I mentioned at the beginning, the role of age plays a significant role. So this doesn't mean that we should discriminate younger learners to have different abilities than older ones, but we should definitely be teaching younger learners differently for older learners, as the learning process is different. What does it mean practically? Me, for my personal experience, the way that I adapt my lessons to younger learners is to make it more practical, clearer, engaging, and shorter, because these elements might allow younger learners to be more engaged and interested, and the language process would be more effective. So an example, a very clear example, is this technique of input, interaction, output. This might work for me, but might not work for you. So as I mentioned before, is just a suggestion. So all three elements are necessary for successful second language learning. Input, giving an input to your students. It might be a video, a short audio, a song, a game, something that exposes the students to language. Second step, interaction. I do believe that making children, younger learners interacting might help them to expose themselves to the others, to communicate, to be curious, and also to gain self-confidence. If I see my peers struggle, I might feel less stressed about myself. And then output, asking them to produce something. It could be a collaborative task, it could be a competition, children love competitions, or it might be just answering some questions that the teachers gave before. It could be a little research, a little project. It can really be anything that you find interesting. So maybe some insight of inputs. So I do believe that naturalistic acquisition is the most effective. This one, it's not just about younger learners. Also, I've worked and I currently work with older learners like teenagers or young adult and middle-aged people. So I think expose students to authentic material like everyday activities and expose them to everyday life contexts, make them identify themselves with the language, with the target language. So, for example, younger learners really love playing, or they like to be curious about the others. So you could make them play games where they have to discover something about the classmates, or they could research something about their hometown. They could research something about their family members, something that exposes them to something like near to them. And obviously, every teacher knows the students. This is the first basics for teaching. I think teacher needs to know their student. So once that you know them, you know which type of context they might be exposed to, or anything you find it relevant for your student. So let's talk about approaches. Let's start from these two simple adjectives. like the teacher approaches should be playful and consistent. So young learners needs to be stimulated, engaged. That you must activate their curiosity. So I think if you make your activity playful, as I said before, little competition, you can assign prizes, rewards, stickers, anything that might feel them part of the game, and consistent, because if the teacher is not consistent, students might lose interest, might get distracted, might not understand the coherency, and might feel like they don't understand like the steps, and you're gonna lose them. So make it playful and make it consistent. So activities and physical movement. I think one of the most useful approach that you could use with students and younger learners is acting out movement in response to instructions and or activities that involves hands, eyes, and ears. And this one is obviously one of the most common approach that you can use with young learners, and it's called total physical response, or you might as well find it as TPR. And I think it's very useful to lower the stress level of the students. If this might be very good for very low levels, beginners level, because there is no need for them to use the language. They just listen to some imperatives and they just need to respond physically to the teacher instructions. So it really requires them to listen and observe the situation. And I think it also makes it fun because there is no need to focus on form or grammar. So basically, students acquire knowledge and meaning throughout instructions. And I think this physical response really works with younger learners. Also, what I do believe it's very useful, it's to give short linked activities. So since younger learners have limited attention, the attention span is very limited compared to adults, it is important to include several short activities in a lesson and move quickly from one activity to the other. My suggestion is around 5-10 minutes. So each activity must be linked to one each other, as I said before, coherence, consistency, but make it short, because if you give too long instructions or too long tasks, they might lose interest or they might just get lost in their thoughts. Um, Another suggestion is to make lessons task based. This is a different approach that I think it might be very useful. So let young learners complete task, gives them a sense of purpose, meaning. They are actively involved and they will achieve coherence and unity. If you give tasks, they have a purpose to follow. They have a goal, and children and young learners love achieving goals. It makes them feel useful, it makes them feel they're learning, and it makes them feel they are building something for themselves. So obviously the teacher needs to give guidance, but I do believe that like the task based learning allows them to be independent, to believe on themselves. So, some suggestions about themes. So, younger learners, I think they don't require like some crazy topics. I think teacher must be kind of giving the stimulation, and theme-based lesson provide continuity across activities and allow English learning to be connected to the children's lives. So just be curious, observe your student, try to understand what they might be interested in, and connect those topics with your lessons. They might be interested in video games, they might be interested in singers or VIPs at the moment. something related to their interest. Most of the time is not the teacher's interest, but students must be at the center of your lessons, not really like about the teacher's interest. Another important element is collaboration. So, activities that work best with young learners are those that where children are involved and they are working with each other. What I really like is small groups activity because peer discussion sometimes can be a little bit limiting. And sometimes, if one of the two doesn't have ideas or is not really in the mood of collaborating or is shy or the affective filter is on, it can be tricky. So, small groups activity like 3 or 4 people might allow students to be playful, collaborative, and differentiated. Another important aspect of teaching younger learners is to have in mind the sense of community, to perceive the class as a community. So, what it means, it's basically seeing it as a place where each child is in the class and it's cooperating and it's collaborating to achieve a common goal. So, of course, every student is important, every student is different from one each other, but I do believe that if you make them feel seen, they will collaborate better in a group, and the sense of achievement, the sense of purpose, it's better when you reach it together instead of by yourself. It could be also be easier because alone you might encounter more difficulties, and if you help each other, it might be easier to kind of overcome obstacles. As I mentioned before, when students accomplish a task, sometimes you have to make sure they are not frustrated or annoyed by the difficulty of the task. So young learners enjoy taking part of activities that they can successfully achieve. So teachers must include some challenge, but providing appropriate guidance. Always observe your students, observe and guide them towards the goal. Do not give them the answer, but give some tips or hints on how to reach the goal. And setting the goals, I think it's very, very important. So, set clear goals for children is important. So, make sure that they know what's the task about, what they have to achieve. Together, we're letting them know when they have to be successful, or if not, why not? So, if they are doing something well, always point that out, make them feel seen and understood, highlight their strength. But also, if they're not successful, it's also okay to point out why they have not been successful, but always give reasons. Make sure they know why they haven't accomplished a certain goal because it helps them understanding what to change in the foreseen future. So let's talk about better methods and more specifically, some techniques. So, in my opinion, audiovisual and associations are the most useful and also engaging. So, an example is outdoor games. So, something that children and young learners, it's to go outside depending on the weather. Here at the moment, we are entering spring, but it really depends on the country you're in, the season. So maybe it's cold outside, maybe it's too hot. But if you find the perfect moment, even 10 minutes, 15 minutes of an outdoor activity is gonna activate your students in a very, very proactive way. Also, modeling, drawing, making craft on the topic of the lesson can really help your students to kind of explore their skills and their curiosity. Some of them might love to use their hands, to use the body. Sometimes they don't need to use the target language in a direct way, but making them using the body might activate that target language. Also, as a teacher, you can use vocabulary expansion games I use sometimes flashcards. You can create your own games. There is Kahoot, Quizzes, Quizlet, Wordwall. There are plenty of websites that you can use to activate vocabulary and to expand lexis. And as I mentioned before, audiovisual methods, it's one of the most useful. So watching video, listening to audios, listening songs related to the topic. Maybe they like a particular show, they like a particular artist. So kind of exploit that artist to connect to your lessons. So I have added some more ideas that I might like that you might find them useful. So routines. Children, young learners love routines. So an idea could be to have like a hello song in the morning or in the afternoon, whenever you start your lessons, just to kind of let them understand the lesson is starting, to give a routine, to kind of have consistency and making them focus on the lesson instead of like focusing on something that is happening outside, or even turning lessons into songs. So something that might be interested, you can connect the topic, lexis, and make them into a song. For some teachers and students, might be very interesting. Another way that you could kind of engage your student is to illustrate new vocabulary, drawing, painting, using your body to illustrate the vocabulary. Visualizing things for children is better than kind of writing it down or just like having this abstract idea. Illustration is very, very relevant. Another way that you can teach young learners is using digital platforms. So, practicing grammar can be tricky. They might find it very boring, very passive. So, digital platform or even like games to make them practice grammar. Flashcards, present simple, present continuous, past simple, past perfect, kind of making them use the language, use the grammar in a very like practical way, in a competitive way. It might engage their interest. Include spontaneous dialogue in the classroom. Depending on the age of your student, sometimes some conversations and debating can be very, very useful, not only to activate their like vocabulary or interest, but also because it's good as an intercultural tool to use in the class to activate their curiosity towards one each other and to make it a little bit more communicative. Another way that you could engage your student is with immersive challenge. So in my school, what we call it is projects, but it doesn't really matter. The idea is to kind of get out of the classroom and try to make them create something of their using the language, collaborating with each other, and kind of having fun creating a final project, and also to make them click with the outside world, because to be fair, the classroom is just a bubble and they need to kind of engage themselves with the outside world as well. It could be about nature, it could be about music, it could be about arts or science, anything that allows them to put in practice the language and to help each other finding a final project to immerse themselves in the language, but also in the outside world. And then maybe at the end you can present um uh like after the immersive challenge they could present to the whole class what they discovered, the challenges, and what they find it interesting about it. So, as I mentioned before, we had technical problems during the first recording. So this would be the time for all the teachers to share. But if you're watching this video, I know that it would be still be useful. So taking notes of your ideas, implement my ideas with yours. So if you have suggestions, please let me know. And if you have something similar or something to make it more interesting, this is the time to brainstorm. I do believe that teachers should be able to kind of contribute to each other ideas. I don't like when teachers keep the ideas for themselves as a treasure, because that's not really the point of English teaching learning. I do believe it's a collaborative field, and my idea together with your idea, we can enrich each other. But most importantly, it's a movement process. It's a ongoing process. I don't see English language teaching as a static field. Um, so it would be nice to just interchange views. And I hope this session was useful. I hope that you find some insights interesting, and maybe a starting point, because a short webinar doesn't really cover the depth of the topic. So this one was just kind of some hints, some like tricks to uh, face the young learners teaching experience. But I do believe there is so much more research to do, and so much to learn. So thank you. Thank you so much for being here to watch my videos and to participate even this in distance. And I hope that like these can contribute a little bit to your young learners teaching experience. And if you want to take a screenshot of the references that I used, I had a look at some books, articles, and interesting videos and websites that I found very interesting. As I said before, it's ongoing process, so I'm still learning. Um, and I think that the young learners, most of the times, teach me more than I could teach them. So my tiny suggestion is be open to your students, be always curious about them, be with your ear open, listening to them, because most of the time, it doesn't matter how many lesson plans you have ready, how much you have researched, they are gonna be teaching you the direction. So I'm gonna end up here with my webinar.